Forget about the fact that we are all social workers. What I would say is that for the growth of any field or any subject, you need research. What does the word research mean? Research, which means to search again and again. The more we keep searching, the more information we find, and the more updated our subject becomes. If you want any subject to grow, you have to engage in research. Without research, all subjects, whether it is social work, whether it is political science, whether it is economics, or whether it is history, it becomes dead. Okay? Research is like a heartbeat, it is like a lifeline without which a subject cannot survive. That is the first reason. The second thing is that why are we studying research in the social sciences and in social work in particular? It is mainly because of the fact that we deal with social problems or social issues, right? And if you want to understand social issues, if you want to solve social issues, we need to understand the causes of the social issues. Okay? For example, poverty. What are the causes of poverty? No social problem is univariate in nature. No, what do you mean by univariate? It's caused by one problem. Is any social problem in the world caused by one cause? No, all problems are multivariate in nature, and that is what research teaches us. Research teaches us that one particular issue or one problem can have many causes, and they all contribute to a particular problem. For example, poverty, as I said, it's not just because of lack of education, it's not just because of lack of employment, it's not just because of environment. There are so many factors that play a role, and research will help us understand what those factors are. Only when you understand the cause of problems can you solve it, isn't it? How can you be a social worker if you don't understand the cause of the problem? So, there are multiple causes of problems, and research helps us to identify them. Thirdly, at the policy level also, in terms of social work research, almost all the major policies of the government, whether it is a state government or the central government, have some research element in them. Without conducting some basic survey, without conducting some basic research, formulating a policy is not possible. Okay? What is a policy? A policy is a blueprint of action. Let us say you have the education policy. The government says that we are going to be covering so many people, we are going to be providing them with so much education. And how did they decide all this? They have decided based on some kind of research, some kind of data that they have. So, that is why research is important at the policy level. So, there are many other reasons for why research is important, but generally I would say it is very, very important because of these three reasons. One is because it is required for the field to survive and grow. Secondly, because if you want to be a social worker, if you want to understand, if you want to solve problems, you have to understand the causes of the problems, which research will help you. And thirdly, most of the policies and the laws and the government that the government makes is because of research, because research helps them. Finally, now you may ask, okay sir, all of this is nice, but why am I sitting here? What do I gain from this? Well, now research is one of the most wanted fields in the education sector. If you want to be a teacher tomorrow, I am sure some of you would like to be academicians, teachers. You can ask your own teachers, your own professors, they will tell you how important research is. Today they are asking for publications, they are asking for your thesis, they are asking for your so many things, right, research related things. So, it is in that context, from the career point of view also, it is very, very important. Secondly, let us say you are going to an NGO tomorrow, you are working in an NGO as a social worker, or you are working in a corporate sector tomorrow as a corporate, as part of corporate social responsibility. You are undertaking a project. Okay? How will you do the project if you do not know research? You have to understand the data analysis, you have to understand interpretation, you have to understand how to write research proposal. So, research is everywhere, you cannot escape research. It is in fact a very powerful tool. People who master research, they master the subject. So, that is why research is very, very important. It is just a general outline for those who are new, who are just thinking about this whole point of this workshop and everything. So, that is about research. Now, the second question, as I told you, PSPP, I think I have already talked to you about what is PSPP. PSPP is a freeware version of SPSS. It is a data analysis software. Okay? It helps us analyze data, perform statistical tests that can help us with our research. I think I talked enough about that. Now, the third question, how to enter data in PSPP. So, let me just show you the this one. So, this data belongs to actually one of my old students, okay, who has done a study on mental health of IT professionals in a particular city. Okay. He has done the study on mental health of IT professionals in a certain city. So, can you see this file? Are you able to see this file?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, This is known as the PSPP software, and I think some of you would have downloaded it already. It is a free software. You just type PSPP in Google and you will get it. No money required, and it's as I told you, very low maintenance. You don't have to spend you don't have to have a very high end computer to use this software. So once you download the software, you will get two views. Okay, one is the data view and the other is the variable view. Okay, the data view and the variable view. And so in the data view, you enter the data. So this is, as you might have noticed already, it is almost like Excel. You know, you would have used Excel in your any time in your life. You would have noticed that there is the cells, isn't it? So it's very similar to Excel in some ways, but much more advanced than Excel, because Excel cannot perform very high end statistics and all. It can do certain statistics, but not everything, and it doesn't give you a very clear output also. But PSPP and SPSS are not like that. Another thing to note, as I told you, is that almost whatever you are seeing here is the same buttons you will find in SPSS also. Okay. So, since you have SPSS as part of your syllabus, the workshop is titled as SPSS, but PSPP is what we are going to be learning, but almost the same button. You install SPSS, you will find the same button, same thing. Only thing is, it is paid. You have to pay for it, and also some advanced features it has, but we are not going to make use of them. We don't need, as students, we will not need it. Okay. So as I was saying, this is the data view and this is the variable view. In the data view, you enter the data of the respondent. So for example, how do you enter the data? See, this is the case. Can you see case 1? So this is the first respondent. So here I have entered the age of the respondent 27. What is his sex? Now sex is gender. Here you have given 2. Now one thing to remember is that SPSS does not understand words. It is a software, it understands numbers. So we have to tell what 1 and 2 means. Age it understands, age 27 we understand, but gender we can't say male female here. So we tell the computer 1 2. Okay, I will come to that, how we do that later on. Religion also same way, it does not understand Hindu, Christian, Muslim and all. So we have to tell it 1 2 3, and then we have to tell what is 1, what is 2, what is 3 to it. Same with caste. This is education, this is marital status, okay, this is type of family, income, expenditure. So like this, for one respondent you would have collected data, it should go like this in a horizontal manner, okay, like this. So one person's data is this. So like that he has collected 50 respondents. So you can see that I will scroll to the bottom, this is the 50th respondent. Okay, so this is how he has entered the data. So how you have to enter is, yes.
Sir, I have a doubt, sir. And
Yes.
this also have to be in a short format like SX.
Yes.
Religion, you have put, yeah. It
Yes.
has to be like this.
Yes, that's a
Okay.
good question. I will show you how that is. So
Yeah.
so this is still 50, and you have to enter like this. Okay. Now you ask the question about short form. So now this is the data view. Okay. There are two views you have to remember. One is the data view, other one is the variable view. Okay. So this is the data view. Now we go to the variable view. Now what is the variable view? Here you see the name, something called name. This should be, like you said, in short form, because the computer cannot understand big words, and there is a limitation. You have to use the short form. But age only 3 letters, so I have used age, and then for sex I have used SX, but there is something called label here. In label you can use the full form. See, here I have used the full form. Even for marital status I put MRTL STAS, just a short form. Here I put properly
Yes.
marital status, and this is just a system issue. So in name you have to always make sure you use small letters, small short forms. You cannot use space, you cannot use full stop in name. In label you have to use it, because this is what the table will show when you create the output. No, this name will come on the top of the table. So whatever you put here, that will come. So you have to make sure you name it properly. So that is with regard to name and label. Name, label.
Okay.
Yes. So this is a variable. So here you see first variable is age and the label is here. Now age we don't have to give any value labels, because it is in continuous form. Now remember, there are 3 types of data in SPSS and PSPP. Okay, I will just show you the type of data, the type of variable, sorry. You click on this measure. Here you can see nominal. What do you mean by nominal? Name. The name, it suggests no nominal name. So it is in nominal form. For example, male and female. It's a name, it's not a number, no, it's a category, it's a categorical variable. So name, that is a nominal variable. Then you have ordinal. What is ordinal? in order. For example, rank order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, for example, how happy are you feeling? 5 means extremely happy, 4 means very happy, 3 means neither happy nor unhappy, 2 means not happy, 1 means extremely unhappy, something like that. So, that is a rank order no, for your feelings, that is known as ordinal variable. I will show you, these are ordinal, all the scale items are in ordinal variable. Then you have something called scale. Now, scale is in continuous form. So, here for example, age is in continuous form, I put here as scale, see it is in continuous form. Continuous form means I will show you in data, see you see this age, it is running no 29, 26, 40, 25. So, this is in continuous form, therefore, we call it a scale variable in PSPP and SPSS. And for this one gender it is nominal, male, female, religion also Hindu, Muslim, nominal. Okay. So, this is how the variables are divided, and one suggestion I would give is whenever you are collecting data, make sure that you collect using continuous form as much as possible. Why continuous form means, if you have continuous form, you can convert it into categorical later, but if you collect in categorical form, you cannot convert to continuous. For example, I will give you, see age is there now, okay. Age is there, it is in continuous form, scale. Scale means continuous, you see the number no, 29, 26, 20, 40. Now, we have this raw data, I can convert into, I can group these people into 3 groups, which I will show you how to do later. But if you already have grouped the people, saying that 15 to 20 is one group, 21 to 30 is one group, then I do not know exactly how old one person is, I can only say he belongs to one age group. Because of that limitation, I cannot do many high end statistics like regression. Regression I can do, but it is very difficult. High end statistics are not possible with categorical and ordinal variables. We need continuous variables as much as possible. So, whenever you are collecting data, please make sure that you collect in continuous form. Age, make sure you collect in continuous form. Some things you cannot collect, for example, sex is there, gender, you cannot say you have to collect male or female, same with religion also. But education you can collect in continuous form. See, when somebody is done till 12th standard, you can say 12 years of education, and somebody is done undergraduate, you can say 15, 12 plus 3, 15, if 3 years degree, if it is a BSc or BA, 3 years, 15, if they have done engineering, then 4 years, right. So, you have to collect as much as possible in continuous, later on we have to categorize into categories. This is just for your information. So, this is how you enter the data, okay. One by one you have to enter like this. I hope that is clear. Any doubts so far before I move on? Please feel free to disturb me in between. You can tell, you can unmute and ask, sir, what is this? I can explain. I want you all to follow. So, any doubts so far? Anything you want to clarify?
As for now, it's clear.
Okay, good. So, let us look at what is the next thing that I need to cover. I am going step by step. Okay, so now you know how to enter the data, and you understood the data view and the variable view. Variable view is where you name the variable, and data view is where you enter the data itself. Now, also I told you about the types of variables, isn't it? I told you about the continuous variable, scale variable, ordinal variable and nominal variable. We looked at what the 3 types. Okay. Now, let us look at the scales and their uses. Now, what is a scale? Can anybody tell me what do you understand by the concept of scale? When you hear the term scale, what do you understand by it? You would have heard the term, no? Not in a general scale, but generally when you hear the term scale.
It's like a proper measurement
that
we get a clear idea.
So,
clear data.
Yes. So, it is something, it is a tool to measure something, no, when you think of a scale. So, in this world there are many constructs. Okay. What do you mean by a construct? Something that is there, but you cannot see. Can somebody give an example of a construct? You like for I will give an example. Happiness is a construct, right? You cannot see happiness, but you know people are happy. There is something called happiness. Similarly, there is mental health. You cannot see mental health, but you know there is something called mental health. It can be measured. Similarly, there is satisfaction with life. Some people are more satisfied, some people are not satisfied. So, there is something, but you cannot see it, but it is there. Similarly, with the help of similarly you have quality of life. You cannot see, sometimes you can, some parts you can see, but generally you cannot see. It has to be, because there is psychological element involved in all of that. So, there are many constructs that you cannot see, but you know they exist, but how do you measure it? That is where the scales are there. Okay. Scales will help you to measure those constructs. So, I will give you example of a construct, depression, right. Depression is a disorder, it is a construct. We cannot see depression. Can anybody see depression? No. It is a construct. It is a issue. It is a disorder. But we can measure. Can we measure depression? Yes. We can measure depression with the help of a scale. Similarly, anxiety. People are anxious, no? Stressed, anxious. Anxiety is different from stress. People are anxious always. There are some people more anxious than others. But can we see anxiety? No. There are some symptoms you may see, but you cannot say, you cannot see anxiety as such. So, therefore, you need a scale to measure it. The same goes for stress also. So, you cannot see stress. Okay. You may be able to see some symptoms, as I said, but generally you cannot see stress itself, but you can measure it using a scale. So, scales help us measure constructs. That is the simplest explanation I can give you for this session. Okay. So, you need a scale to measure certain things. Now, in this study, let me just minimize this. In this study, this boy has used a scale called DAS 21. Okay, DAS 21, depression, anxiety and stress scale. It has 21 items, as you can see. This is DAS. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 21 items. There are 21 questions. So, what is a scale? It is a tool to measure a particular construct, and these scales are usually what? They have items in the scale. What are items? Items are questions. How are you feeling today? Are you feeling sad? Are you feeling happy? You know, there is it is measuring something. Okay. So, it is basically a well structured question, a set of questions that measures certain constructs. So, this scale is one of the most popular scales in psychology. It is called DAS 21. It was developed by two authors called Lovibond and Lovibond in 1995. It is very popularly used. Almost a majority of the psychological studies you will find this scale, DAS 21. It is actually DAS 42. They have minimized it to 21, so this has 21 questions, as you see, and these questions measure depression, anxiety and stress. There are 7 questions for depression, 7 questions for anxiety, 7 questions for stress. Okay. Together it is known as DAS 21. Now, if I have time at the end, maybe after the break, I will search for the scale and I will show you how the scale looks. But for now, this is what scales are. Any doubt with regard to scale? You understood scale or? Okay. All right.
We can use any proper or structured scale, or is there any rules and regulations?
Yes, very good, ma'am. Yeah, so there is something called a standardized scale. Okay, so these are all the one that I told you, this one, this DAS 21, this is a standardized scale. This means that this scale has been tested. It has been tested and it has been published in many journals already. Therefore, it is a reliable scale, it is a valid scale. But if you develop a scale on your own, it may not be a valid scale. There is a process for testing the validity. There is something called content validity, there is factor analysis. It is a very big statistical procedure. People do a PhD on developing a scale. So, you need a large sample for developing a scale. So, usually what I suggest to students is who are doing masters, even for PhD scholars, I suggest don't develop a scale because you are learning research. Use a scale that is already established. Now, some scales are paid scales. You have to pay dollars, especially because if it is from the West, to buy the scale. Some scales are free. Now, this scale DAS 21 is a free scale. Similarly, there is another scale called quality of life scale by WHO, World Health Organization. That scale is also free. You do not have to pay for it. It is available online. You just type WHO BREF 24 or WHO quality of life scale, you will find it online and you can download. Similarly, this DAS 21 also, if you type online, you will find a scale. You can use it. It is always suggested. Yeah, it is always suggested to go with a standardized scale because it will give your study some validity, because if the scale itself you are using, if it is not reliable, if it is not measurable, then whatever conclusion you draw from your research can become invalid. Somebody, if you present the thesis somewhere, or if you present a paper somewhere, or thesis, or your master's thesis, somebody will ask, what scale have you used to measure depression? You will say, I developed my own scale, I wrote some question. They will say, then how do you know your tool is correct or not? But if you say, I have used a standardized scale, a well established scale, scale that has been tested many times, published in many journals, then there won't be any question. So that is why always I suggest for master students, don't try to develop scale, use a scale that is already established. Okay.
So one more question.
Yes.
Like industry like mixed, can we use standardized tool as well as can we also create our own scale?
So that is see, when you create it's a good question. So when you are creating a questionnaire, no, for collecting the data, you should have a questionnaire or an interview schedule. First of all, what is the difference? I'll tell you. In an interview schedule, as you know, you interview the person and collect the data personally. Questionnaire, you mail it to them or send it through form. Nowadays you have Google form and all that, which I don't like because a lot of inaccuracy in that, but you can do. Now the scale cannot be altered. You should not mix the scale. You cannot remove one question from the scale. You cannot modify the tool. If you do that, then the validity of the scale will become affected. It has to be as it is. If you want to add some questions, don't ask related to this topic, like it is measuring depression. Don't need to ask questions regarding depression because it's already measuring. You can ask other questions. For example, you can ask the respondent's age, you can ask their religion, you can ask their education, you can ask their marital status, you can ask their income, you can ask their physical health, how it is. You can ask them to rate their physical health. You can ask them how many kilometers a day they are walking. Whatever the socio-economic and other details, demographic details, those questions should be your own because you are going to compare them with the scale. Only collecting the scale data is not enough. No, you can only say, okay, majority are having this much depression, but who is having more? Are young people having more? Are old people having more? Are male having more? Are female having more? Are educated people having more? Are married people having more or unmarried people having more? All of these things you cannot know unless you collect the data like this, age, sex. That is why when you are collecting the data, on one side you should have the scale, on the other side you should have all these quantity, other socio-demographic and economic details.
Yes, sir. Clear. Thank
You got it? Okay.
you. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Any other questions? So you should ask as many questions as you have, the better your research will be, because there are so many factors that cause depression. You know, if you have more questions, then obviously one of them will have some kind of, could have one of them connection with the this one. So better to have many questions in your thesis. Anything else? If not, I will talk about validity and reliability.
Yes, sir. We can move on.
Okay, move on. So now we talk about validity and reliability. Now this is again connected to the scale only. I will just show you in the PPT. So you understood scales and you understood the uses. Now we look at the validity and reliability. So what is validity? What is reliability? See, validity of a tool is the ability of the tool to measure what it is setting out to measure. I repeat, validity of a tool is the ability of the tool to measure what it is setting out to measure. That is how I define it. What do I mean by that? See, let us say this scale, what does it do? It measures depression. Let us assume it only measures depression. I am using it for what? Measuring depression. What if the scale is not measuring depression and it is measuring something else? It is measuring happiness, or if it is measuring some stress, it is measuring something else. Then there is a problem, no? Then the scale is not valid. So a good scale should have good validity. That is what the whole process of factor analysis, content validity, all of them do. It is a very high end statistics. We do not have to break our head about that. We can just say that a scale that is published many times, that has been validated by other researchers, available online with published in good journals, they are valid scales generally. Okay, their scale, they are actually measuring depression. It is actually measuring what it is setting out to measure. It should not measure anything else. So that is validity. Now what is reliability? Reliability is the ability of a tool to reproduce the same results again and again. There are different types of reliability also. What is reliability? The ability of the tool to reproduce the same or similar results again and again. As I told you, there are different types of reliability, and there is another one particular type of reliability called internal consistency, which is what we are going to measure. internal consistency. What do you mean by internal consistency? So, let us take this scale for example. I will give you an example so you understand. So, let us say there are 21 questions in this scale, is not it? Now, is these 21 questions, let us say I am respondent number 1. For the first question I say yes, or I give this is out of 5 Likert scale, I say 1, I give 1 mark. Second one I give 2, third one I give 1. Okay, I have a pattern. So, is the second respondent also giving the same response? If he says 1, if he says 1, if he gives 1 for the first question, second one also he should give the same that I am giving, similar or at least similar to that. If I am giving 2, he should at least give 3 or 1, not 5. So, there is some kind of consistency in the respondents responding to the question. Okay, they should all give similar responses to the questions. I mean, when I say similar responses, I am not saying all of them should have the same response. I am saying if they are saying yes to one question, they should also say yes to another question which is similar to that. Okay, I will give a very funny example. Let us say I am eating ice cream, I like ice cream. Okay, I say somebody asks me, Gokul, do you like ice cream? I say yes sir, I like ice cream. Then next question, which flavor of ice cream do you want? I should say either vanilla, chocolate or butterscotch or whatever. I should not say I do not like ice cream. Then that means I am contradicting. That means there is no internal consistency. That is what internal consistency means. You should have some consistency in the responses. Okay, you getting my point? So, for that there is a way of testing it. There is a way of testing the reliability. Now, validity you do not have to break your head. Don't see when you go for presentations, no, I am telling you there are some researchers, they will ask you this question, they do not know. So, they will ask you this question, what is the validity of your scale? There you do not have to worry. Only one response you have to give them is, look, I have used a standardized scale. What do I mean by standardized scale? I mean that the scale has been validated. Okay, it has already been validated, it has been published by many journals, it has been proven to be effective, it is actually measuring depression. So, therefore, I did not check for validity, I do not have to check. But one more thing they may ask, what about reliability? I told you know this internal consistency, that also you do not have to worry about actually. If somebody asks, you can say it is a standardized scale, it is reliable, I do not have to worry about it. But in case they keep insisting, you can do a reliability test. Okay, I will show you how to do a reliability test. Let me go to analyze, sorry. Yeah, I have to go to analyze. In that there is this option called reliability. Okay, I select reliability. Now, in this I select all the 21 items, DAS 1, DAS 2, DAS 3 till 21 I have to select. Let me select it. Okay, so 21 items are selected. Now, I have to put it in this items column. This arrow here, I just click that, all the items will go into the items column. Now, I have to go to, there is this options there, okay, not needed. Now, once that is inside, we have to click OK, that is all. Now, there is an output, I will show you, I think it is, yes. So, here the output is here. Now, can you see this Cronbach alpha? Is it visible? I know it is a bit small. Can you see this Cronbach alpha?
Yes.
What is the value here?
0.90.
Yes, 0.90. That means it is highly, there is high reliability. So, there is a different levels of measuring the Cronbach alpha. There are different categorizations. So, if it is above 0.7, it is okay, you are in the safe. 6 is very poor, there is poor internal consistency, it means. If it is 0.7 and above, it is okay. 8 is very good. If you have 8.8 something, it is very good. If you have 9, it is almost excellent. So, this one you have 0.90 exactly. It is a very highly reliable scale. Okay. This is because it is already, as I told you, it is already well established scale. It is a scale that has been published many times. So, we do not have to worry about it, but just in case somebody asks you what is the validity of the scale, you can tell it is the reliability. You can say, sir, I have got a Cronbach alpha value of 0.90. and 0.90 means it is highly reliable, there is great internal consistency. So, there is no problem with the scale, okay, because scale is very, very important. Your whole research depends on your scale. If your research, if your scale is good quality, if it is well validated, if it is reliable, then your results will also be very good and very reliable. If your scale itself is not good, if your scale itself has no internal consistency, if you self developed a scale with no understanding of the concept, then it is going to be a failure. Your research or your whole test, your whole thesis is you have to throw it. So, that is the importance of validity and reliability. Any questions so far? Any clarifications? Please feel free to ask, because I will go slowly only. We have lot of time today. First day I am not going to rush. I will just introduce you to all the concepts before we enter into data analysis. Because without understanding the concept, it is very difficult to understand why we are doing this, what is the purpose. See, we are not statisticians, no, we are all social workers. Although I have studied statistics, we am a social workers. We have to connect our data analysis or data with the reality. So, why we are doing what is the purpose of doing it, all of this we have to be very, very clear. Any doubt so far?
Sir, actually I want to know.
Yes, ma'am.
How about this reliability for analyzing this reliability for things other than scales?
What other things would you suggest, ma'am?
If I am not using a scale, maybe I am using some other tool.
Some other tool would also, some other tool will also have certain questions with the standardized responses, no. So, for example, these 21 questions are there. It is a scale, but it has questions, and it basically has a Likert scale response. What is a Likert scale? You might know, 1 to 5. So, 1 is not at all happy, 2 is somewhat happy, there is a rating. So, if you have a set of questions with a Likert scale type of rating, all the standard response for all the 21 questions, like in terms of measurement 1 to 5, then you can check for reliability also. So, yes, you can say I have self developed the scale. The scale is not a validated scale, but I have checked for reliability. But even then, at a high end, if you are going for any paper publication, if you are going for any good thesis presentation, they will definitely ask you what about the validity of the scale, is the scale valid, and then later on they will ask you about reliability. So, that is why I suggest always best to go with standardized. Even for PhD scholars, always better to go with standardized. Once you are thorough, see, I managed to develop one scale after completing my PhD, because it requires lot of data analysis, lot of volumes of data. So, and it requires lot of understanding of the concept also. If you want to develop a scale, you must first understand the construct, no. Say for example, depression, I have to be an expert in depression before I can lay some questions, good quality questions. I have to understand the concept. If we ourselves are we are not very clear about our construct, then it's that's why it's always best to use standardized, and wait once you become an expert in the field, when you understand a concept very, very thoroughly, then it is good, you can start developing a scale. Or other option is seek the help of experts who in that field, and then with them develop the scale, which is what I did. I sought the help of some experts and we developed the scale. So, that is the thing, ma'am. I hope I answered your question. Anything else? Any other things? No. All right. So, now the next thing is we actually go into data analysis, but before that I will give you some tips. I think we can start the data analysis at around 4. So, we have another 15 minutes. I will just give you some general tips for researchers before we begin the data analysis, because as I told you, data analysis is only one part of it. Without understanding the theoretical part, then it is become very, very problematic. Then you will not understand, then I will also it will be demotivating. So, I will just highlight some important points you need to remember. This is for your future research also, in case you are, I know now you are done. Ma'am, have they collected the data? Is it over? Their
Yes, sir. Second years they have
Okay. There are first years also here?
Yes.
Okay, then that is good. So, the first years you can listen, even second years. Now, if you look at these points, you will think about it maybe what you did. So, the first one is choose topics with measurable constructs. Why do I tell that? Because if you do not know what you are measuring, how are you going to do data analysis? You understand? So, for example, there is a student who wants to measure something, okay, he wants to measure something, but she does not know what. She is confused, how do I measure this? I do not know what I am measuring. So, you have to choose construct that you can measure. Happiness can be measured, for example, there is a scale for it. Okay. Satisfaction with life, there is a scale for it. Depression, there is a scale for it. So, whenever you are choosing a topic, please make sure you choose a topic with measurable constructs. How do we do that? You go to Google, check is there a scale for depression. You want to, for example, you want to do a study on depression among students. Okay. You need to have a tool for that, no? So, you have to go online and check. There is something called Beck's depression inventory, and then there is this scale also, DAS 21. So, these scales will give you these are the tools that will help you measure depression. But if you are choosing something that you cannot measure, then it becomes very problematic. Later on you will say you do not know what you are doing, you do not know what you are measuring. Okay? You do not know, for example, political interest. Now, there may be a scale for political interest, which political party they supported. There may be a scale, or maybe there is not a scale for it, there is no scale for it. What are you going to do? It becomes very difficult, no? So, choose a topic which has measurable constructs and for which there is a scale. Second thing, as I told you earlier also, I will not repeat, choose a standardized scale. Try not to choose a scale which is not standardized, because as I told you, your validity and your reliability largely depends on the scale. Third point, use probability sampling. Now, I do not know if they have studied research, ma'am, have they studied research, have they had some basic understanding?
Yes, sir. Second years we have, first years actually we have started
just now. Okay, good. So, there are two types of sampling for those who are new. So, one is probability, other is non-probability sampling. Now, under probability sampling, you have many methods. One common method I will tell you is simple random sampling through lottery method. What do you do there? For example, you take, let us say you are, we are 50 people here. Out of 50 people, I want to select 30 people. I will write the names of all your 50 people, put it in a bowl, shake it, and then remove 30 out of them. That is simple random sampling through lottery method. In probability sampling, that is a form of probability sampling. In probability sampling, we know the size of the universe. What do you mean by universe? The population. So, here we have 50 people, no? The 50 people is the universe. Among that, I am selecting a sample which is 30. So, sample is what? A small part of the universe, and through this sample only we conduct our research. Now, some of you may ask, why are we doing sampling, sir? Why can't we take all the 50 people? That is a good question, but we are talking about a small universe. Sometimes it is a very big universe. Let us say you take the city of Chennai, okay. You want to check how far the COVID has spread. Can you go to each and every house and check? Do you have that much time, money, effort, manpower? No. What you will do? You will take a sample. You will take 5 from one city, one part of the city, other from 5, or maybe one from North Chennai, one from South Chennai, East Chennai, West Chennai, and then you will get a sample. And then based on that, you will conclude and say that COVID has spread like this. So, that is the point of sampling. Okay. Since we cannot take the entire universe, we have to limit ourselves to sampling, and probability sampling is where we know the size of the universe. So, let us say I know in Chennai so many crores of people are living, out of them I will take a few thousands as sample. So, always best to use probability sampling because it is more accurate, it is more reliable, the data is more reliable, and there is less bias. Non-probability sampling, there is a chance of bias. Okay, there is something called snowball sampling, where you ask one person and they tell the other person. So, all of these, those are all non-probability sort of sampling which are not very reliable. If you want to publish a paper, if you want to write a thesis, best not to use non-probability sampling. Try as much as possible to use probability sampling. Now, in some cases it is very difficult to use probability sampling because you do not know the size of the universe. I give an example. Now, if you are doing a study on transgender community, or if you are doing a study on sex workers, you do not know exactly how many sex workers or transgender community are there in a locality. especially sex workers, they will not tell you that they are there. So, in that case you have to use non-probability sampling, you have to use snowball sampling. What is snowball sampling? I told you, you ask one person, they will refer you to the other person and so on and so forth. Okay, so, that is how it works. So, but generally speaking, try to use probability sampling. Now, most of you, I am sure you would have chosen topics concerning students, no, that is a very common nowadays, all the, because getting students is very easy, data collection from students is easy. So, they will choose, in that case, if you are choosing one college, one classroom, one department, please use probability sampling, find out the size of the universe and then collect the sample. Okay. So, that is about that. The fourth one is have an adequate sample size. So, whenever you are, why do I say, see why am I talking about all of this is, it will all have an effect on your data analysis. Okay. We are talking about data analysis, but if you do not have good quality data, and none of the tests are going to be useful. Some of my students, they may ask me sometimes, sir, I have done all the tests, but I am not getting significance anywhere. I am not getting the result. What do I do, sir? I said, because your quality of data is so poor. You have to choose a good quality data. No? So, these are all important when you talk about collecting data. That is why I have highlighted. So, the fifth one is have an adequate sample size. See, the greater the sample size, the higher the quality of your research and higher the quality of the data and the analysis also. You will get, there is a higher probability of you getting some significance and things like that. So, always have a good. So, for master's level, I would say 100 is good, is a good decent number. You should have at least, if you are using 20, 30 and all, then you will not get good. Even 50 is low only. This boy has done 50 in this example. For his level, he managed. But I would suggest now this was about 3 years ago. Now, I would say at least minimum is 50, but try to go for 100. Now, my current students, they are all doing 100, at least 100 I tell, without them, because we want to have some solid result. Okay, we want to have some reliable data. We want to have some good adequate sample to draw a conclusion. Because what is the point of whole research, this whole data analysis, everything, is to use a sample to make certain generalizations about society, right? If this is how the situation is in my study, this is how it should be for everybody else. Is what, if you only when you have adequate sample size, you can make a generalization. So, take this class itself, you are 50 people in this class, I will talk to 2 people in the class and I will say, oh, this class everybody is very silent, everybody is this one. Is that true? No, because there are 50 people and I have only taken 2 people. So, you cannot form a conclusion based on the small sample size, that is the conclusion. So, therefore, always have an adequate sample size, try not to go for a very, very big sample size. Now, lastly, fifth point, prefer an interview schedule over questionnaire. This is also very important for first years and second years who are listening, especially for first years I would say, who are going to still collect the data. What is the difference between questionnaire and interview schedule? You would have heard of it. Interview schedule is where you ask the questions personally to the respondent, okay, either via telephone. Now, we are living in an era of COVID. So, you can call, okay, or have a video call or an ordinary call and collect the data. So, that is always preferable compared to questionnaire. What is questionnaire? You mail it to somebody. Nowadays there is a bad habit, I don't know how many of you students are doing, or this one, they use Google form. Now, I actually taught my students how to use it, but I think it is not a good thing. Now, this time I told them none of them should use. So, the thing about Google form is, you type the questions and you send it, you put it in WhatsApp and forward it to somebody. Now, first of all, who is filling the data, you do not know. Secondly, there is no proper sampling procedure. It is like snowball sampling. You are passing to somebody, somebody is passing to somebody. Even my 5-year-old nephew has a phone, even he will enter. Is he a sample? So, these kinds of issues are there. I always suggest my students to not use Google form, try not to use this questionnaire method unless and until very, very, like for example, you are doing a study in some for some other city in some other place and you cannot go there, and that there also you can call the respondent and collect the data if they are able to speak and all that. Better to avoid questionnaire, because all your data quality will go down. That has happened, I told you, students will come and say, sir, I did not get the data properly, people have given some response, because when you send it as a questionnaire, people are not going to respond properly. This is all I am talking out of personal experience only. They will not respond, they will give some answer You are asking some 10 important questions, they will tick first question and they will say submit, done. You will not get accurate data. So, that has happened to some students and they come and ask me, since I am the research coordinator there, they will be under some other faculty or someone, they will come and ask me, sir, why am I getting low quality data, people are not responded properly. I said, because you forwarded the questionnaire, you should ask, you should take an effort, you should call the person and ask personally, what is this forwarding business, you know. So, these are all some important things. So, please these are all tips you should always remember when you are doing research as a first time researcher. Choose topics with measurable construct, choose a standardized scale, use probability sampling, have an adequate sample size, and prefer an interview schedule over questionnaire. These are just very small basic suggestions. I am sure if you follow it, your research process will be smooth, because these are the areas where students make a lot of mistakes. They will choose a topic they can't measure, they will not use a standardized scale, they will think they will develop a scale, they will not use probability sampling, they will use snowball sampling, they will take only 5 or 10 people as sample, then they will send it as a questionnaire, and then they will say data has not come, sir, data has not come. That is because the quality. So, these are just important tips. I hope you will all remember it and follow it. So, yes.